My name is Aurora Walker. I'm 34. Last Tuesday, October 24th, at 9:17 a.m., I stood in my grandfather's sunlit living room, watching Beckett Hayes, my half-brother, casually tap a forged promissory note against the polished rosewood case of my grandfather's prized cello. The note, he claimed, showed I owed him exactly $95,000, the exact appraised value of Grandpa's entire musical instrument collection, a collection that was supposed to be mine. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my knees, a cold, empty ache. The aroma of stale coffee and desperation hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the life Beckett was now celebrating, a life he'd stolen from me. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 25 years to the scent of aged paper and warm vanilla wafting from my grandfather's study on Elmwood Lane. I was 9, perched on a stack of sheet music, watching Grandpa polish his antique violin. The room was always a haven, filled with the rich, woody smell of instruments and the faint, sweet scent of the vanilla cake his housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, always baked. Grandpa, a retired estate lawyer with eyes that saw more than he let on, ran a soft cloth over the instrument, its finish gleaming. "This old friend," he'd said, holding it up. "It's seen much. It's been loved. And Aurora, darling, anything truly loved can never truly be taken away. Remember that, little star." His voice was a low hum, like the rich tones of his cello. He'd promised, not just to me, but to my very soul, that this collection, his legacy, would be mine, because I shared his deep passion for music. He saw the way I handled the instruments, not just as objects, but as extensions of history, of emotion. He often found me tucked away in that study, not playing, but simply touching the smooth wood, breathing in the stories they held. His hand, warm and calloused from years of string changes and legal briefs, would rest on my shoulder. "You understand them, Aurora. You always will." I can still feel the weight of his hand, the certainty in his voice. It was a warmth that made the chill of Beckett's betrayal even colder. He always used to say, "The truth, like a perfectly tuned note, resonates clearly, no matter the surrounding noise." I always remembered that. Beckett, my half-brother, had always harbored a bitter resentment, like a sour note that lingered in the air. He felt our shared father had abandoned him, focusing more on my mother and me. He saw me not just as a rival, but as the embodiment of everything he felt he'd been denied. 2 weeks after Grandpa's passing, at the family gathering, a supposed reading of the will turned into a public execution. "Aurora has always been the forgotten one," Beckett sneered, his voice dripping with condescension, "always forgetting her financial obligations." He held up the promissory note, dated a year prior, claiming it was for a loan I'd taken to fund my failing business. $95,000 she owes me. The instruments are my collateral. My face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. My hands shook as I tried to speak, to explain it was a fabrication. "My event planning business is thriving. I wouldn't need a loan, and certainly not from him." But the words caught in my throat, tangled with shock. My Aunt Carol, a woman who always deferred to the loudest voice, nodded slowly, her gaze pitying. My Uncle George merely looked at his shoes. Nobody questioned Beckett, the self-proclaimed responsible older brother. Nobody asked for proof beyond the single official-looking document he waved. Beckett just smirked, a cruel glint in his eyes. "Some people," he drawled, looking directly at me, "just don't know their place. They're the forgotten ones." The fallout was immediate and brutal. The news, warped and sensationalized, spread through our small community like wildfire. Within days, 2 lucrative contracts for upcoming corporate galas, worth an estimated $38,000, were abruptly canceled, citing unforeseen reputational concerns. My meticulously built client base, Aurora's elegance, started to crumble. Former clients, once effusive in their praise, now returned my calls with clipped, distant tones, or not at all. My assistant, Sarah, a bright-eyed young woman who'd worked tirelessly beside me for 3 years, tearfully gave her notice, unable to risk her own career tied to a financially unstable business. I sat at my desk, the glow of my monitor reflecting a hollow ache in my eyes, watching my savings dwindle. My bank account, once robust at $112,000, was now a meager $4,350. The rent for my small office on Hawthorne Street was due in 2 weeks, and the thought of feeding my beloved cat, Maestro, felt like a monumental burden. Every day felt like walking through quicksand, each step heavier than the last, as I watched my life unravel, stitch by painful stitch. Survival became my only event to plan. I took a job as an event assistant at the community center, coordinating birthday parties for 10-year-olds and bingo nights for seniors. It was a far cry from the high-end corporate events I used to orchestrate, a humbling descent from intricate floral arrangements to lukewarm punch. My new boss, Maria, a kind woman with an infectious laugh and eyes that held deep reservoirs of compassion, seemed to sense my struggle without prying. She'd offer me an extra shift, setting up chairs for a local charity drive, or help me find discounted supplies for a school play. My days were filled with the mundane, inflating hundreds of brightly colored balloons, carefully folding pastel napkins, troubleshooting faulty sound systems, and scrubbing sticky tables until my hands ached. Each evening, as I collapsed onto my worn sofa, my muscles screamed, and my mind replayed Beckett's sneering face. He wasn't content with just taking the instruments. His calls, always from an unknown number, would come late at night. "Still planning your little parties, Aurora? Don't forget who owns Grandpa's Stradivarius now. You're still the forgotten one." Sometimes I'd see him drive past the community center, his luxury sedan a stark contrast to my tired bicycle, a triumphant smirk on his face. The true public humiliation, the kind that scalds your soul, came 3 months later during the annual Spring Festival at Crestwood Park, an event I had meticulously planned for years before Beckett ruined my business. I was there, ironically, as a paid volunteer, helping direct traffic to the local artisanal craft booths. The sun was bright, music drifted from the main stage, and families laughed, enjoying the festivities. I was guiding a young couple with a stroller when Beckett appeared, flanked by two of his newfound business associates, men in sharp suits who clearly held him in high regard. He spotted me immediately, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Well, well, if it isn't my dear half-sister Aurora," he announced, his voice carrying just enough to draw the attention of the several festival-goers nearby, including Maria and 3 local council members I'd worked with for years. He strolled closer, affecting an air of deep concern, but his eyes were mocking. "Still dabbling in event planning, I see? Though I suppose parking duty is a bit of a downgrade from your former ambitions." He paused, letting his words hang in the air like a foul odor. "Last I heard, your Aurora's elegance was more like Aurora's elephant in the room, crushing under the weight of its own financial incompetence." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. His associates offered forced, uncomfortable smiles. Maria, who was only a few feet away, paused, a basket of freshly baked cookies in her hands, her expression shifting from cheerful to deeply troubled. The council members, who had greeted me warmly moments before, now averted their gaze, their faces coloring. "I'm sure you remember that promissory note, don't you, Aurora?" Beckett continued, leaning in conspiratorially, as if sharing a secret with his associates, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "The one for $95,000? My generosity, of course, to help her out of a tight spot. But some people just can't manage money. They're the forgotten ones, aren't they?" My jaw tightened, but I did not react. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I forced myself to take a slow, deep breath, maintaining a neutral expression. The young couple with the stroller looked from Beckett to me, their eyes wide with discomfort. Maria's hand went to her chest, her brow furrowed in sympathy. The council members were now fully engaged in a sudden, intense discussion about the price of kettle corn. I saw the whispers start, the curious glances, the immediate distancing. It was like a physical blow, yet I stood there, utterly still. Something hardened inside me that day, something beyond anger or hurt. It was a cold, quiet resolve. He wanted me to break, to cry, to lash out. But I simply met his gaze, my eyes calm and unreadable, and said in a low, clear voice, "Excuse me, Beckett. I have traffic to direct." I turned, calmly signaling a car into an empty spot, leaving him momentarily speechless, his smug grin faltering. The shame was suffocating, but it was also a crucible, forging a new strength within me. That night, lying awake, the memory of Beckett's sneer still fresh, I felt a flicker of remembered warmth. Grandpa. I got up, compelled, and walked to the small storage unit I now rented, filled with the remnants of my old life. Tucked away in a dusty, water-stained cardboard box labeled Grandpa's Keepsakes, I found an old, worn, leather-bound journal. It wasn't his formal legal journal, but a personal one. Inside, among his elegant script, was a faded photograph of him and me, taken at the Spring Festival when I was a child. Beneath it, a single line in his handwriting. Beckett's duplicity always finds its way to the surface. He is a master of the fabricated tale. Remember the dates, Aurora. Always remember the dates. I stared at the photo, then at the journal entry. It was dated 8 years ago. 8 years ago, Grandpa knew. He'd known Beckett would try something like this. He'd known my half-brother harbored that simmering resentment, the belief that he was the forgotten one and I was the favored child. My hands trembled not from fear, but from a sudden, dizzying realization. Beckett hadn't just recently fabricated the promissory note. He had likely been planning this for years, and Grandpa had seen it coming. Hope, fragile and terrifying, began to take root in the desolate landscape of my despair. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I had to look. Secretly. A few weeks later, a letter arrived at my new, meager apartment on Willow Creek Road. No return address, just a P.O. box number. Inside was a formal-looking document, a settlement offer from Beckett's lawyer. It stated, in cold legal jargon, that if I relinquished all claim to Grandpa's entire estate, not just the instruments, but the small trust fund he'd set up for my education, Beckett would graciously waive the $95,000 promissory note. It was an insult, a blatant attempt to consolidate his stolen gains and leave me with nothing. The document included a veiled threat, a clause about pursuing further legal action, including claims of slander and emotional distress, if I continued to harass him about the instruments. "You'll regret this, Aurora," the unspoken message screamed from the page. He wasn't just taking my inheritance, he was trying to erase my existence. The choice was stark. Accept this humiliating offer and be utterly forgotten. Or fight. The calm resolve that had solidified at the festival now hardened into steel. I would not be the forgotten one. The very next morning, as I was opening up the community center for the early morning yoga class, my phone, which rarely rang anymore for anything important, vibrated with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. "Aurora Walker?" a deep professional voice inquired. "My name is Arthur Pendleton. I was your grandfather's attorney. He left specific instructions for me to contact you." My heart leaped into my throat. He explained that Grandpa had anticipated Beckett's actions and had made arrangements. Mr. Pendleton wanted to meet immediately at his office, located on the 5th floor of the Sterling Tower on Commerce Street. As I was leaving, my old business email, which I rarely checked, dinged. It was Beckett. A smug one-line message. "Heard you're still chasing ghosts. Don't waste your time. You know what they say about those who are desperate, Aurora. They're the forgotten ones." He was trying to sabotage me, to instill doubt. But the fear that had once paralyzed me was now replaced by a chilling clarity. I sent a one-word reply. No. Then I hailed a taxi, ignoring the frantic text from Beckett that immediately followed. Arthur Pendleton was a man in his late 60s, with kind, discerning eyes that held the wisdom of decades spent navigating intricate family disputes. His office, filled with towering bookshelves and the scent of old leather and pipe tobacco, was a stark contrast to the sterile courtrooms I imagined. He offered me a seat, a gentle smile on his face. "Aurora," he began, his voice calm and measured, "your grandfather, William Walker, was a remarkable man. He saw things others missed. He specifically asked me to wait to contact you, to allow things to unfold naturally, to see if Beckett would indeed follow the path he predicted." He paused, looking at me with genuine warmth. "Your grandfather understood the deep-seated resentment Beckett harbored. He called it the poison of the forgotten one. Beckett's constant claim that he was overlooked. He knew Beckett would use any means, any legal loophole, any fabricated document to assert dominance over you. He knew Beckett considered you a threat." Mr. Pendleton then reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope heavy with official seals. "This," he said, placing it on the desk between us, "is from your grandfather. He instructed me to give it to you when you sought me out, not before. He said you would know when the time was right to find the truth." My hands shook as I reached for the envelope, the paper cool beneath my fingertips. I was too stunned to speak, the weight of the moment pressing down on me, silencing any question, any thought. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the storm of emotions swirling within me. "He loved you very much, Aurora. He believed in your quiet strength." I didn't open the envelope in Mr. Pendleton's office. I needed privacy, space to breathe, to absorb whatever truth lay inside. I drove straight back to my tiny apartment, locking the door behind me, the silence of the room a welcome blanket. I sat on my worn sofa, Maestro curling against my side, and slowly, carefully, broke the seal. My grandfather's familiar, elegant script filled the page. "Dear Aurora, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Beckett is already doing what I knew he would do. He's found a way to take the instruments, hasn't he? He truly believes he is the forgotten one, perpetually overlooked, and so he seeks to diminish anyone he perceives as a rival. I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried, but Beckett doesn't hear reason. He only hears documents. Do you remember that last spring festival, when you found that broken music box beneath the oak tree? I told you, anything truly loved can never truly be taken away, little star. I meant it. That music box now sits in a small, hidden compartment behind the second bookshelf in my study, the one with the Shakespeare folios. Inside it, you'll find another key. The original trust deed for the musical instrument collection is with my attorney, Arthur Pendleton. His office is at 520 Commerce Street, Suite 500, in the Sterling Tower. The copy I've left you is incomplete, not enough to prove anything on its own, but enough for you to know I'm telling the truth. Inside this envelope, you will find certified copies of the instrument appraisals, dated annually for the past 15 years, forensic analysis of the ink on the forged promissory note, proving it was created after my death, not before. Witness statements I collected over 8 years, from various individuals Beckett attempted to defraud, detailing his patterns of forgery and manipulation. A coded ledger from a Swiss bank account, containing funds specifically earmarked for your legal defense and the full restoration of the instrument collection. Don't show this to anyone. Not Aunt Carol, not even Mr. Pendleton until the right moment. Wait until the right time. He will know what to do when you present this. You are not the forgotten one. You are my architect, building a legacy of truth and grace. Always have been. All my love, the truth, like a perfectly tuned note. I read the letter once, then a second time, then a third. My vision blurred with unshed tears, my breath catching in my throat. My hands trembled, not from fear now, but from the sheer magnitude of his love, his foresight. He had seen it all, planned for it, for 8 long years. I stared at the documents, the cold, irrefutable evidence, the forensic report, the witness statements, the coded ledger. It wasn't just about proving my innocence, it was about exposing Beckett's entire pattern of deceit. He had woven a web, and Grandpa had quietly, patiently laid tripwires. The scale of Grandpa's preparation, the silent strength behind his actions was overwhelming. This wasn't revenge I felt, not a burning desire for his suffering. It was a fierce, quiet resolve for truth, for justice, and for the promise Grandpa had made to me. The voting precinct on Old Mill Road was abuzz with activity. It was election day, a cold, crisp Tuesday, November 5th. The main hall, usually used for community events, was transformed with rows of voting booths, temporary tables, and a palpable air of civic duty. Approximately 50 people milled about. Local politicians greeting constituents, poll workers guiding voters, and a handful of reporters capturing the scene. Beckett, always keen to project an image of community engagement, was there, shaking hands and offering carefully rehearsed smiles. He was wearing an expensive navy suit, an aura of self-importance clinging to him. He'd even set up a small table with campaign literature for a local candidate he publicly supported, ostensibly to boost voter turnout, but really to bask in the attention. My old boss, Maria, was there, volunteering, as were Aunt Carol and Uncle George, making their way to the voting booths. I walked in calmly, Mr. Pendleton, a quiet, reassuring presence at my side. Beckett spotted me immediately, his smile tightening into a familiar sneer. "Look what the cat dragged in," he announced, his voice carrying clearly over the murmurs of the crowd. "Aurora, still campaigning for the poor me vote? Some people never learn to move on. They're the forgotten ones, always holding on to the past." A few heads turned, recognizing the drama. He seemed emboldened by the audience, stepping closer, holding up a printout of the promissory note. "She owes me $95,000, folks." Tried to claim my grandfather's entire musical collection, but luckily I was smart enough to get her to sign this. He waved the paper with a flourish. "Some people just can't accept responsibility." Aunt Carol and Uncle George exchanged uneasy glances. I remained still, my gaze steady. Mr. Pendleton stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise with quiet authority. "Mr. Hayes, if you would allow us a moment." Beckett scoffed. "Allow? Why? To hear more of her fanciful lies? She always was the forgotten one in her own fantasy world." "No, Mr. Hayes," Mr. Pendleton continued, unmoved. "To hear the truth." He turned to the crowd, his voice gaining a lawyer's practiced resonance. "My name is Arthur Pendleton, and I was William Walker's attorney for over 30 years. His last wishes, regarding his beloved musical instrument collection, are unequivocal." He held up the sealed envelope, the same one Grandpa had entrusted to him. "And here I have a letter from Mr. I have Walker himself anticipating this very confrontation." The murmurs in the hall grew louder. Beckett's confident smirk began to waver, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his face. "What is this nonsense?" he blustered, trying to snatch the letter. Mr. Pendleton deftly pulled it away. "This, Mr. Hayes, is your grandfather's final testament. He foresaw your actions, your claims of Aurora being a forgotten one who owed you money for a fabricated debt." He began to read Grandpa's letter aloud, his voice clear and strong. As he read the lines about Beckett's duplicity, about the forgotten one, and his master of fabricated tales, Beckett's face drained of color. When Mr. Pendleton read the part about the forensic analysis of the ink on the promissory note, proving it was created after Grandpa's death, a gasp rippled through the precinct. "This document," Mr. Pendleton said, holding up a certified copy of the forensic report, "proves the promissory note, Mr. Hayes's waiving was a forgery. Furthermore, Ms. Walker's career as an event planner provides an undeniable alibi." On the specific date and time Mr. Hayes claims this note was signed, Ms. Walker's company, Aurora's Elegance, was meticulously coordinating the Silver Bells Charity Gala at the Sterling Grand Ballroom. We have the signed venue contracts, vendor emails for the floral arrangements and catering, hourly setup photos taken by her assistant, and sworn client witness statements confirming her presence and direct involvement from 2 p.m. to midnight that day. She simply could not have been at the location Beckett Hayes fabricated. Beckett's eyes darted frantically around the room. "This is a conspiracy! She's lying! She always lies!" he shrieked, his composure completely gone. He lunged for the documents Mr. Pendleton held, a wild desperation in his eyes, inadvertently knocking over his own campaign table with a crash of flyers and plastic cups. "She's always been the manipulative one. The forgotten one is her, because she can't be trusted." "Indeed, Mr. Hayes?" Mr. Pendleton calmly held up a stack of documents. "These are sworn affidavits from 3 individuals detailing your similar attempts at fraud over the past 8 years, collected by Mr. Walker himself. One involves a forged invoice for a vintage car, another a fake charitable donation receipt, the third a fabricated inheritance claim, all bearing your unique inconsistent signature." Aunt Carol covered her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Uncle George stared, a look of profound disappointment on his face. The reporters were scribbling furiously. "I can't believe all this time," someone whispered. Beckett was stammering, his words collapsing into incoherent accusations, desperately trying to regain control. "It's a frame-up! You're all against me!" he yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. I stepped forward, my voice calm, clear, and unwavering, and "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for truth. My grandfather knew this day would come. These documents speak for themselves." I did not wait for an apology, for an explanation, for anything. I simply turned and walked out of the precinct, Mr. Pendleton following, leaving Beckett Hayes to his self-immolation, his cries of being the forgotten one, now ringing hollow in the suddenly silent hall. In the days and weeks that followed, the story broke, first locally, then nationally, painting Beckett Hayes as the fraud he truly was. He lost his lucrative advisory position with a regional investment firm, his political aspirations evaporated, and his carefully constructed social standing crumbled into dust. Legal proceedings began, with the evidence Grandpa had meticulously collected ensuring a swift and undeniable conviction for forgery and attempted fraud. He was sentenced to significant community service and ordered to pay restitution not only to me, but to the other victims Grandpa had identified. I chose to forgive him, not for his sake, but for my own peace. But I also chose to maintain a firm boundary: no contact. A month later, I visited Grandpa's grave at Sunnybrook Memorial Park, a quiet, peaceful place overlooking a valley. I placed a single perfectly tuned tuning fork on his headstone. "You taught me, Grandpa," I whispered. "The truth, like a perfectly tuned note, resonates clearly." A quiet moment of gratitude. 6 months later, my life had blossomed in unexpected ways. I reopened Aurora's Elegance, specializing in bespoke, ethical event planning, but this time I focused on art and music-themed galas, connecting my passion with my profession. My new office, a charming space on the revitalized waterfront, had a small, private nook where I kept a vintage music box, the one Grandpa had mentioned in his letter, now playing a delicate, almost melancholic tune. Beside it, a photo of Grandpa and me, his eyes full of knowing warmth. Mr. Pendleton, now a trusted friend, helped me establish a foundation in Grandpa's name dedicated to providing musical instruments to underprivileged children. I still coordinate parties, but they're for a purpose, filled with genuine joy, not superficial pomp. I even started taking cello lessons again, the resonant vibrations a balm to my soul. If you're watching this, understand that silence isn't always compliance. Sometimes, silence is the space you hold for truth to finally resonate. You don't need to be loud to make your presence felt. or to fight for what is rightfully yours. Now, as I sit by my window sipping my morning coffee, watching the gentle February snow fall outside, it no longer feels like being locked out in the cold. It feels like watching a beautiful, quiet world unfold from the warmth of a home I've built, a home for myself. Maestro purrs contentedly at my feet. The sun glints off the fresh snow, a clean, bright canvas. If you've ever had to quietly gather your strength and trust in a deeper truth, type resonating truth in the comments. Or if you've had to walk away from a family dynamic that tried to diminish you, type quiet strength. Both are brave, both are valid. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. Have a peaceful day.